I promise your entire camping gear, your $40 water filter, your little survival bracelet from Amazon, and everything you think you know about staying alive in the wild is an absolute joke compared to what actual Americans were doing in the wilderness. We are talking about a man who crawled inside a dead mule like it was an Airbnb, soldiers who let maggots eat their wounds and called it medicine, and a naked dude who outran an entire tribe in the snow. 111 real historical survival hacks that will make you feel personally attacked. So hit that subscribe button. Or honestly, you probably would not last one day out there anyway. 1. A Cherokee warrior was minding his business in the woods when a rattlesnake sank its fangs right into his finger. Most people would cry, pray, or pass out, but this man looked at his tomahawk and made the fastest decision in human history. He chopped his own finger clean off right there on the spot like he was splitting firewood. No hospital, no anesthesia, no second opinion from WebMD. Just one swing, and the problem was completely solved. Doctors later confirmed the amputation actually stopped the venom and saved his entire life. 2. Lewis and Clark's crew spent one brutal winter doing something that would make every barbecue-loving American immediately question their life choices. These men consumed over 50 gallons of rendered dog fat across a single season and then had the absolute nerve to say it tasted better than any meat they had ever eaten. Better than beef, better than venison, just pure dog grease. They were out there sipping it like a protein shake and filing rave reviews. Historians confirmed this is documented in the actual expedition journals, meaning these men wrote it down proudly with zero shame. 3. The Donner Party is already the most cursed camping trip in American history, but somehow it keeps getting weirder. Survivors trapped in the Sierra Nevada snow discovered that eating raw liver kept their bodies warmer than cooked meat. They were accidentally conducting biology experiments nobody signed up for. Scientists later confirmed this was real thermogenesis, meaning the body burns more energy digesting raw protein, which generates internal heat. These starving people stumbled onto a legitimate metabolic survival hack completely by accident while just desperately trying to survive another horrifying frozen night in the mountains. 4. Appalachian settlers were out here doing wilderness crafts that would destroy any modern camping influencer. They took cattail heads, dipped them in bear grease, and created fire starters that burned 45 full minutes in pouring rain. Not a drizzle. Actual rain. These homemade torches were waterproof and made entirely from swamp plants and bear fat, which is genuinely the most Appalachian sentence ever written. Modern survivalists tested this method and confirmed it works exactly as described, meaning these settlers accidentally invented weatherproof fire technology centuries before anyone thought to patent anything remotely similar. 5. Colonial settlers were lost and clueless about finding food until they noticed black bears had the whole situation completely figured out. Bears would waddle through the forest and lead settlers directly to wild bee trees full of honey, without even trying to help anybody. Settlers figured out that following bear trails revealed entire safe food corridors through unknown wilderness. The bears were just living their best life, while accidentally serving as unpaid wilderness guides for confused European settlers who had absolutely no business wandering those woods in the first place without any survival knowledge whatsoever. 6. A fur trapper in 1820s Montana got mauled by a grizzly and decided the solution was stuffing gunpowder directly into his open wound and lighting it on fire, which is genuinely the most unhinged medical decision ever made on American soil. He packed the gash, grabbed a flame, and gave himself an internal explosion as a treatment plan. Somehow, this man survived the bear, the gunpowder, and the fire. He then lived another 40 full years afterward, which means he casually outlived everyone around him by literally exploding himself completely on purpose. 7. Shoshone women were walking around with the world's first sunglasses, centuries before Europe had even considered eye protection. They cut thin slits into strips of bark and wore them over their eyes, which completely eliminated snow blindness in brutal winter conditions. Settlers who learned this trick stopped going blind in the snow entirely. Engineers who designed modern ski goggles later confirmed the slit design works on the exact same optical principle. Shoshone women invented performance eyewear using tree bark, and nobody gave them a single patent, a sponsorship deal, or even one polite thank you note. 8. Civil War surgeons discovered something deeply upsetting that also turned out to be completely genius. They started deliberately packing open wounds with maggots, and the results were impossible to argue with. Every wound treated with maggots healed cleanly, while normally treated wounds rotted into gangrene and killed soldiers rapidly. The surgeons were disgusted, the patients were horrified, and yet the maggots kept winning every single time without fail. Modern medicine confirmed maggots only consume dead tissue and secrete natural antibacterial compounds. These tiny uninvited doctors performed precision wound cleaning, while everyone involved desperately wished they were not there. 9. California gold rush miners made one of the strangest dietary discoveries in American history completely by accident. Men who ate raw potato peels stayed perfectly healthy, while men who cooked absolutely everything started dying from scurvy at alarming rates. Heat was destroying the vitamin C in their food, and nobody realized it until the raw potato peel crowd was visibly thriving. Miners were out there chewing potato skins like fine dining, while their well-cooked neighbors slowly fell apart. Sometimes the worst-looking meal on the table is the one that ends up keeping everybody alive out there. 10. Plains tribes built a personal heating system so effective it sounds like something a modern engineer would design in a laboratory. They filled animal bladders with hot coals, sealed them up, and tucked them inside their clothing to survive negative 30-degree nights. Not next to their clothing. Inside it, directly against their skin. This was essentially a hand warmer the size of a water bottle made from animal organs filled with live fire. Modern thermal testing confirmed insulated coal packs at body contact generate sustained heat for hours. These tribes invented wearable heating centuries before anyone created the electric blanket. 11. A Plains tribe fire-starting trick sounds completely made up but is fully documented. Warriors spun a dry yucca stalk into a buffalo chipboard and produced a flame in under 90 seconds flat. No matches, no lighter, no panicked Google search. Just a stick, dried buffalo dung, and enormous confidence. Researchers who tested this confirmed the yucca and buffalo chip combination creates friction heat faster than almost any other natural fire-starting method ever recorded. These tribes ran a high-speed fire operation using materials most Americans would refuse to touch. 12. Frontier scouts figured out one of the greatest animal tracking secrets in wilderness history, and it had nothing to do with footprints. They noticed deer almost always bedded within 400 yards of an underground spring, even when no surface water was visible anywhere. Scouts started following deer movement and consistently found hidden water sources that would have taken days to locate otherwise. The deer were just napping near their favorite water spots while frontier scouts used them as living water detectors without the deer ever agreeing to help anybody. 13. A Montana fur trapper in 1826 got caught in a blizzard so severe that his survival plan became one of the most disturbing decisions in American wilderness history. He killed his mule, hollowed out the stomach cavity, and climbed inside to sleep through the night. Just a man curled up inside a mule waiting for morning like this was a normal Tuesday. The body heat retained inside kept him alive through temperatures that would have killed him within hours. Outside in the open. 14. A stranded Wyoming mountain man in 1847 woke up with a fully dislocated shoulder in the wilderness, with nobody around to help. After what must have been an extremely brief moment of thinking, he stood up and sprinted full speed directly into a pine tree, with his bad shoulder leading the charge. The impact slammed the joint back into the socket instantly. He reportedly got up and kept walking like nothing happened. Modern doctors confirmed blunt force trauma at the right angle can actually reset a dislocated shoulder joint. 15. Navajo healers were using something in wound treatment that sounds like a strange home remedy but turned out to be genuinely advanced medical technology. They packed fresh spiderweb directly over open wounds, and the wounds stayed clean, closed faster, and showed dramatically less infection than untreated wounds. Scientists who analyzed spider silk later discovered it contains proven antimicrobial proteins that actively fight bacterial growth. Navajo healers were applying a natural antibiotic bandage made from spider silk while everyone else was pressing dirty cloth onto wounds and desperately hoping for the best. 16. Alaskan trappers who ran completely out of food discovered one of the most desperate survival meals in recorded American history. They boiled their own leather boot soles repeatedly until the material broke down into a thick gel, and then drank it to stay alive. Not ate. Drank boot soup. The collagen released from boiled leather provided just enough protein to prevent their bodies from shutting down completely. Historians confirmed multiple documented cases of trappers surviving on boiled boot gel, long enough to reach safety and live another day. 17. Comanche riders navigating the vast Texas plains at night developed a navigation method so creative it almost sounds invented. Instead of looking up at the sky, they looked down at still water ponds and found Polaris perfectly reflected on the surface below them. This meant they could navigate accurately without ever craning their necks upward in total darkness. Modern navigation experts confirmed the reflection method works exactly as well as direct star observation. These riders were using puddles as compasses while galloping across Texas at night, which is genuinely brilliant. 18. Civil War soldiers discovered a fire survival trick during rainy campaigns that seems impossible nobody thought of sooner. They flipped turtle shells upside down, built fires inside the curved shell, and used it as a natural wind and rain shield that kept flames burning in conditions that extinguished every normal campfire immediately. The shells were fireproof, naturally curved, and completely free because turtles were everywhere. Soldiers stayed warm during storms that left other units cold and miserable. Turtles were just existing peacefully, while soldiers repurposed their shells as portable fireplaces. 19. California settlers crossing the Mojave Desert were desperately searching for water when someone noticed vultures circling at dawn were not just drifting around looking dramatic. They were roosting directly above natural springs every single morning without exception. Settlers who started following vulture patterns consistently located water sources that would have taken days to find otherwise. Scientists later confirmed vultures returned to water sources daily at predictable times. These settlers turned the creepiest bird in the sky into the most reliable water-finding tool available in the entire desert. 20. Death Valley. 49ers figured out a heat survival schedule that sounds absolutely miserable, but kept people alive in one of the most brutal environments on Earth. They traveled only between midnight and 9 in the morning, then buried themselves in cool sand during deadly midday heat and simply waited. Just grown adults lying buried in the desert, taking the world's worst nap. Researchers confirmed sand just 12 inches below the surface stays significantly cooler than air. Above it even during peak heat. These travelers invented passive cooling using nothing but dirt and patience. 21. Stranded Oregon Trail groups who assigned rotating night watch roles survived 3 times more often than groups who did not, and the reason had nothing to do with actual danger. Giving people a job prevented their brains from completely falling apart under pressure. Psychologists later confirmed that purpose and assigned responsibility are the strongest known shields against mental collapse in crisis situations. These wagon train survivors accidentally discovered occupational therapy while just trying to make sure somebody stayed awake through the night without losing their mind completely. 22. A Kentucky frontiersman in 1790 took a chest wound in the wilderness and decided the solution was heating pine pitch over a fire and pouring it directly onto the injury to seal it shut, which sounds absolutely horrifying and also somehow worked perfectly. The hot tar created an airtight seal over the wound that prevented air from entering the chest cavity and kept him breathing normally. Modern trauma surgeons confirmed airtight chest seals are still the correct treatment for that exact wound type today. This man accidentally performed correct emergency thoracic surgery using tree sap in the Kentucky woods. 23. Pueblo people were eating something that would make most Americans immediately leave the dinner table without saying goodbye. They taught Spanish explorers to pound dried grasshoppers together with cornmeal into a flour that was 70% protein and stayed shelf-stable for months without any refrigeration whatsoever. The explorers who actually tried it survived significantly better than those who refused. Modern nutritionists have confirmed that insect protein is among the most efficient food sources on Earth. These Pueblo people were running a high-performance nutrition program centuries before protein supplements existed, using nothing but grasshoppers and a rock. 24. Cheyenne warriors had a boot waterproofing technique that is simultaneously the most disgusting and most effective leather treatment method ever documented in American history. They chewed raw buffalo brain directly into the leather of their moccasins until the natural oils fully penetrated the hide and made it permanently water repellent. Not treated, permanently repellent. Modern leather workers confirmed that brain tanning is still considered one of the most effective natural waterproofing methods available today. These warriors were walking around in perfectly waterproofed footwear that they made using their own mouths and zero additional equipment whatsoever. 25. Iroquois people figured out a fire-starting solution for wet weather that completely embarrasses every modern camper who has ever given up and gone inside because of rain. They split green wood lengthwise, dried only the protected inner core, and used that completely dry interior wood to start fires even when every single piece of outer wood was totally soaked through. The outer wood was wet, but the inside was bone dry and ready to burn immediately. Modern fire experts confirmed inner wood moisture content stays dramatically lower than surface wood, even during prolonged heavy rain and storms. 26. Sioux Scouts developed a predator tracking system using crows that was so accurate it essentially gave them a live aerial map of dangerous animals across miles of open terrain. They learned that crows mob and circle aggressively over specific treetops only when a large predator is sitting directly below them on the ground. By reading crow behavior from a distance, scouts could map entire predator territories without ever getting close enough to be in danger themselves. The crows were just harassing predators as usual, while Sioux Scouts used their drama as a completely free long-range wildlife detection system. 27. Trappers in Minnesota discovered that cattail fluff stuffed inside moccasins worked as insulation so effective it outperformed most natural materials available in the northern wilderness during brutal winter months. The cattail fibers are naturally hollow, which means they trap warm air exactly the same way modern Gore-Tex and synthetic insulation materials work today. Engineers who analyzed cattail fiber structure confirmed the hollow shaft design is genuinely superior for thermal retention. These trappers were walking around in scientifically advanced insulated footwear, made entirely from swamp plants, while modern outdoor companies now charge hundreds of dollars to replicate the exact same principle. 28. John Coulter escaped a Blackfeet war party while completely naked in winter, and the reason he survived 11 miles of barefoot running through freezing terrain was genuinely psychological. He later said he convinced himself he was already dead before he started running, which eliminated fear entirely and allowed his body to perform without the physical limitations that panic creates. Sports psychologists who studied his account confirmed that eliminating fear response genuinely allows humans to exceed normal physical performance thresholds significantly. Coulter outran armed warriors through frozen wilderness by simply deciding in his mind that he had nothing left to lose. 29. Cherokee medicine women treated severe burns using a clay mud application technique that was so effective it functioned almost identically to modern clinical burn dressings used in hospitals today. They packed clay mud onto burned skin in thick layers and left it to harden and dry completely undisturbed over the wound. The clay drew heat out of the tissue, created a protective barrier against infection, and kept the wound moist underneath while it healed. Modern burn specialists confirmed this method mirrors current treatment principles almost exactly. Cherokee healers were running a medically sound burn treatment program using riverbank mud centuries before burn units existed. 30. Stranded Southwest settlers discovered that prickly pear cactus pads could be eaten raw after burning off the spines, and each single pad contained up to 85% water inside its thick, fleshy interior. People crossing the desert who figured this out stayed hydrated for days, using nothing but cactus plants growing directly out of the ground around them. Modern survival guides still list prickly pear as one of the most reliable emergency water sources in desert environments today. These settlers stumbled onto a natural water storage system that the desert had been offering for free the entire time they were dying of thirst. 31. Mountain men discovered they could measure trail elevation using nothing but a pot of boiling water and basic observation. Water boils at lower temperatures at higher altitudes because atmospheric pressure decreases as you climb. So trappers would boil water, note the temperature, and confirm exactly how high they were sitting in the mountains. Modern physics textbooks confirm this method is completely accurate. These mountain men were performing atmospheric pressure calculations in the wilderness, using a campfire and a pot, while just trying to figure out where they were. 32. A Revolutionary War soldier lost in the wilderness pulled off one of the most creative fire-starting moves ever documented in American military history. He shaved ice into a curved lens shape, held it up to focus direct sunlight onto a pile of dry moss, and ignited it successfully. Just a man making fire from frozen water using basic optics in the middle of a survival emergency. Modern physics confirms ice lenses absolutely work for focusing sunlight. This soldier accidentally performed a physics demonstration while desperately trying to avoid freezing to death alone in the woods. 33. Seminole warriors navigating Florida swamps figured out that alligators were accidentally revealing freshwater locations to anyone paying close enough attention. Alligators always build their nesting holes just above the local water table, meaning their nests consistently sit right above accessible freshwater below the surface. Warriors who followed alligator nesting activity consistently found fresh water in terrain, where locating it otherwise would have taken days. The alligators were just trying to have babies in peace, while Seminole warriors used their real estate choices as a completely reliable freshwater detection system throughout the swamps. 34. Mormon pioneers crossing brutal desert stretches figured out a cooling system for their covered wagons that dropped interior temperatures by 20 full degrees, using nothing but wet burlap and moving air. They soaked burlap fabric over the wagon frame and had someone fan it continuously, which created evaporative cooling inside the wagon, strong enough to make desert crossings survivable. Modern engineers confirmed evaporative cooling works on the exact same principle used in swamp coolers today. These pioneers invented functional air conditioning for their wagons using wet sacks and human effort while crossing one of the most dangerous desert routes in American history. 35. A Donner Party survivor wrote something in her journal that became one of the most documented psychological survival discoveries in American wilderness history. She said counting her steps out loud was the only thing that kept her body moving forward when every physical signal her body sent told her to stop and sit down permanently. Modern sports psychologists confirmed that rhythmic counting redirects the brain away from pain signals and creates a sustainable movement loop. This exhausted woman accidentally discovered a cognitive endurance technique that athletes and military personnel still use today just by desperately counting steps through the snow. 36. Mountain men used whiskey as both a wound antiseptic and a painkiller simultaneously in field surgery situations. And this was not just desperate improvisation, but documented standard practice recorded on at least 4 separate occasions with zero other anesthetic available anywhere. The alcohol content in whiskey is sufficient to kill surface bacteria when applied directly to wounds. Surgeons who reviewed these historical accounts confirmed whiskey application was genuinely better than nothing in wilderness trauma situations. These mountain men were performing documented field surgery using frontier bourbon as their entire medical kit without flinching once during the procedure. 37. Cheyenne women taught settlers a bone marrow soup technique so efficient it seems almost impossible that one elk leg could feed 6 grown adults for 2 full days. They cracked large femur bones open using rocks, extracted the rich marrow inside, and boiled it into a dense, calorie-packed soup that sustained entire groups through brutal conditions. Modern nutritionists confirmed bone marrow is extraordinarily calorie-dense and nutrient-rich. These women were running a high-efficiency wilderness nutrition operation using rocks and bones, while settlers who learned from them dramatically improved their survival rates out on the open plains. 38. Frontiersmen tracking direction in dense wilderness learned to read moss growth specifically on rocks rather than trees, and the reason completely changed how they navigated. Trees twist and lean toward light as they grow, which causes moss to appear on incorrect sides and give dangerously false directional readings. Rocks stay fixed, meaning moss on rocks grows consistently on the north-facing side every single time. Modern wilderness navigation guides still teach this exact rock-moss distinction today. These frontiersmen figured out that the forest was actively lying to anyone who trusted tree moss for navigation in dense woodland terrain. 39. Plains tribes solved the problem of carrying fire across hundreds of miles between camps by storing smoldering buffalo dung inside sealed clay pots and transporting live coals the entire journey without ever needing to restart a fire from scratch. The clay pot insulated the coals from wind, and the dense buffalo dung burned slowly enough to stay alive for extraordinary distances. Researchers confirmed buffalo dung produces long, burning low-oxygen embers, perfect for extended transport in contained vessels. These tribes were essentially running a mobile fire delivery service across the Great Plains, using clay pots and cow dung as their entire infrastructure. 40. Appalachian settlers figured out one of the earliest and most reliable long-range winter weather prediction systems available before any meteorological instruments existed anywhere in the region. They watched gray squirrel migration direction every fall and knew from experience that squirrels only move southward when the coming winter will be genuinely extreme. Normal winters produce no mass squirrel movement at all. Wildlife biologists later confirmed squirrels respond to atmospheric and environmental pressure signals weeks before weather patterns become detectable to humans. These settlers were using squirrel behavior as a seasonal forecast model that predicted severe winters with remarkable consistency, generations before thermometers were common. 41. Trappers who fell through frozen ice discovered that stripping completely naked and wringing every single garment bone dry before redressing was the only method that actually worked for surviving the aftermath. Wet clothing against skin in freezing wind kills 5 times faster than bare skin alone, because water conducts heat away from the body at a devastating rate. Modern hypothermia researchers confirmed this counterintuitive fact completely. These trappers figured out that standing naked in a blizzard was genuinely safer than keeping wet clothes on their bodies. 42. An 1860s explorer, stranded completely alone in the wilderness, survived 22 days by writing daily letters to his wife that he knew with absolute certainty he would never send to anyone. He maintained a strict writing schedule every single day without missing once. Psychologists who studied his account confirmed that rigid daily structure and purposeful activity are the strongest known preventers of psychological disintegration during prolonged isolation. This man kept his mind completely intact during a 3-week wilderness survival emergency simply by writing love letters to someone who had no idea he was in danger. 43. Lakota healers treated arrowhead wounds using chewed yarrow, root paste packed directly into the injury, and the results consistently outperformed every other field treatment available on the open plains. Warriors treated with yarrow stopped bleeding significantly faster than those treated with nothing. Scientists who analyzed yarrow root centuries later confirmed it contains alkylic acid, which is a proven natural blood clotting agent. Lakota healers were applying pharmaceutical-grade wound treatment made from a common wildflower, while the rest of the world was still pressing random cloth onto wounds and watching people bleed out unnecessarily. 44. Hopi runners completing brutal, long-distance desert journeys carried small pouches of dried corn pollen to chew during the run, and the reason was far more sophisticated than it sounds. The pollen absorbed directly through the soft tissue lining the mouth, bypassing the digestive system entirely and delivering fast energy directly into the bloodstream. Modern nutritionists confirmed sublingual absorption is genuinely faster than digestion for delivering nutrients during physical exertion. These runners were using a form of fast-acting nutritional supplementation made from flower pollen centuries before sports nutrition companies invented anything remotely similar to put in a packet. 45. Oregon Trail Scouts figured out how to locate mountain passes through completely unknown terrain by watching where eagles soared in lazy thermal circles high above the ridgeline. Thermal columns rise strongest through the lowest elevation gaps in any mountain range because warm air funnels upward through the path of least resistance. Scouts who followed eagle thermals consistently found passable routes that would have taken weeks to locate on foot. The eagles were just riding warm air currents, enjoying the view, while Oregon Trail Scouts used their flight patterns as a free aerial survey of the entire mountain range ahead. 46. Colonial settlers built fire-resistant shelters by mixing clay with animal hair and plastering it thickly onto wooden walls. And the resulting material was so effective it became the direct ancestor of modern fiber-reinforced concrete used in construction today. The animal hair prevented the clay from cracking under heat, stressed the same way synthetic fibers prevent concrete from fracturing under load. Modern materials engineers confirmed the structural principle is identical. These settlers were accidentally inventing composite building materials in the American wilderness using mud and leftover animal hair while just desperately trying to keep their cabins from burning down. 47. Comanche hunters discovered that bison herd stampede paths served as the most reliable navigation highways across the entire featureless Great Plains during drought conditions. Bison always stampede in a direct line toward the nearest water source, when drought stress triggers their movement instinct, meaning their trampled paths pointed toward water with remarkable accuracy. Scouts who followed old stampede trails consistently located rivers and springs that were invisible from the surface. These hunters were reading bison panic routes as a water-finding map while crossing terrain that offered no other navigational landmarks in any direction for miles around. 48. A Death Valley survivor in 1906 made what sounds like the most irrational decision possible when he poured his remaining drinking water over his clothing instead of swallowing it during the final desperate hours of his ordeal. The evaporation of water from his wet clothing dropped his body surface temperature enough to keep him conscious and functioning for 4 additional hours until a rescue party finally located him alive. Researchers confirmed evaporative cooling through wet clothing is measurably more efficient than drinking water at that stage of heat stroke. He survived by wearing his last drink instead of consuming it. 49. Shipwreck survivors washed onto the Pacific coast in the 1800s discovered an unusual psychological recovery technique, completely by accident, that researchers later confirmed was genuinely effective at restoring mental stability after trauma. Survivors who named every single object in their camp out loud recovered cognitive function significantly faster than those who stayed silent. Psychologists confirmed that naming objects restores the brain's sense of control and environmental mastery, which collapses during traumatic events. These shipwreck survivors were accidentally performing cognitive behavioral therapy on themselves using nothing but their own voices and the random objects scattered around their temporary camp on the beach. 50. A 49er miner broke his leg completely alone in the California wilderness miles from any camp and responded by lashing his broken limb to a pickaxe handle, using whatever material he had available, and then crawling 3 full miles back to camp on his hands and knees without stopping. Doctors who examined him later confirmed the improvised splint had held the bone in acceptable alignment during the entire crawl. This man fashioned functional orthopedic equipment from a mining tool, applied it to himself, and then dragged himself home through the dirt like it was simply a minor inconvenience. 51. Klondike Gold Rush survivors discovered that salmon eggs buried underground and left to ferment naturally were completely safe to eat when every other food source had completely disappeared. The natural lactic acid fermentation process that occurred underground eliminated harmful bacteria while preserving the eggs as a viable protein source. Food scientists confirmed lactic acid fermentation is a legitimate preservation method still used in foods today. These desperate miners accidentally stumbled onto ancient food preservation science while just trying to find anything edible enough to survive another brutal Alaskan winter. 52. Blackfoot Scouts developed a terrain mapping technique using lightning strike patterns that sounds completely bizarre but turned out to be genuinely accurate and reliable. Lightning repeatedly strikes the same ridgelines because high iron ore deposits in the rock attract electrical strikes consistently over time. Scouts who memorized repeated strike locations on ridgelines created reliable landmark maps of entire mountain ranges without ever climbing them. Geologists confirmed iron ore ridges do attract disproportionate lightning activity. These scouts were reading electrical storm patterns as a free geological survey of terrain that most explorers spent weeks trying to map on foot. 53. Civil War field surgeons discovered a simple addition to their tool sterilization process that simultaneously raised the boiling point of their water and added antiseptic properties to the entire procedure in one single step. They added pine resin directly to the boiling water containing their surgical instruments. The resin raised the water temperature above normal boiling point and released natural antimicrobial compounds into the solution. Modern chemists confirmed pine resin contains proven antibacterial agents. These surgeons were accidentally running a chemically enhanced sterilization process using tree sap while performing battlefield surgery with zero formal chemistry knowledge whatsoever. 54. Early American woodsmen developed a water safety test so simple it required no equipment and no chemical knowledge, yet proved consistently reliable across decades of wilderness travel throughout North America. They watched where insects did not swarm above standing water. Stagnant toxic pools produce no insect life above their surface because the chemical composition makes them uninhabitable for the organisms insects feed on. Modern ecologists confirmed insect absence above standing water is a reliable indicator of dangerous contamination. These woodsmen were performing basic ecological water quality assessment, using nothing but their eyes and careful patient observation of the surrounding environment. 55. A trapper in North Dakota survived a night of -40-degree temperatures by digging a narrow trench in the snow, lining the bottom with pine boughs, and laying additional boughs across the top as a roof, creating a complete snow shelter in under an hour. The interior temperature of his snow trench stayed at 32 degrees Fahrenheit all night, while the air outside dropped to lethal levels. Modern survival instructors confirmed snow trenches maintain near-freezing interior temperatures regardless of outside conditions. This trapper built a life-saving shelter using nothing but frozen precipitation and dead tree branches. 56. Survivors of the 1800 Natchez wilderness disaster made one of the most psychologically sophisticated group decisions ever recorded in American frontier history. They held a group vote and formally banned all panicked discussion from the camp for the duration of their ordeal. No catastrophizing, no doom predictions, no panic allowed by democratic agreement. Modern crisis psychologists confirmed that eliminating panic communication from group dynamics dramatically improves collective decision-making and survival outcomes. These survivors were accidentally practicing structured psychological crisis management while stranded in the wilderness using nothing but a group vote and enforced conversational discipline. 57. Zuni healers treated rattlesnake bite wounds using warm ash packed directly from a fire onto the bite site, and the reasoning behind it was chemically sound, even though nobody involved understood the chemistry at the time. Snake venom is acidic, an alkaline ash. Applied to the wound surface neutralizes surface-level venom, while simultaneously slowing tissue breakdown around the bite. Modern toxicologists confirmed alkaline compounds do interfere with certain venom components at the surface level. These healers were performing basic acid-base chemistry on snakebite wounds using fireplace ash, while achieving genuinely better outcomes than doing absolutely nothing at all. 58. Appalachian settlers figured out how to transform acorns from a completely inedible toxic food into a high-calorie flour substitute using nothing but a running stream and 3 days of patience. Raw acorns contain tannins at levels toxic enough to cause serious illness, but submerging them in flowing stream water for 3 full days leaches the tannins out completely. The result was a mild edible flour with substantial caloric value. Modern food scientists confirmed flowing water tannin leaching works exactly as described. These settlers turned poisonous nuts into survival food, using a creek and thyme as their only processing equipment. 59. Plains Scouts developed one of the most precise natural calendars ever documented in American wilderness history by tracking wildflower bloom sequences across the grasslands throughout the season. Certain specific flowers appeared with such consistent timing that scouts confirmed they bloomed exactly 14 days before the last killing frost of spring every single year without variation. Modern botanists studying phenology confirmed that certain plant species respond to precise temperature accumulation thresholds, making their bloom timing remarkably consistent. These scouts were using flower patterns as a frost prediction calendar that gave them 2 full weeks of reliable advance warning before the final deadly freeze arrived. 60. Apache warriors solved the problem of nighttime heat loss around a campfire by stacking curved pieces of bark in a semicircle directly behind the fire, creating a reflector that bounced heat toward their sleeping area. The curved bark reflector doubled the effective heat reaching sleepers while simultaneously cutting wood consumption in half over a full night. Modern fire engineering confirms curved reflective surfaces behind fires dramatically increase directional heat output. These warriors built a heat management system using scavenged tree bark that made their fires twice as efficient while everyone else was just sitting close and hoping for warmth. 61. mountain man Jim Bridger figured out that elk were accidentally revealing dangerous Yellowstone thermal activity by avoiding certain winter meadows completely. Elk instinctively sensed where thin, ice-covered boiling springs beneath the surface and refused to walk there under any circumstances. Bridger mapped dangerous thermal zones simply by watching where elk would not graze. Park geologists later confirmed those exact meadows contained active boiling springs just beneath the frozen surface that would have been completely invisible and instantly fatal to any unknowing traveler walking across them. 62. Hopi people developed a personal heating system for cold nights using heated river rocks placed inside clay pots and tucked directly inside their clothing against their skin. River rocks retain heat 3 times longer than air, meaning a properly heated rock stays warm for hours after removal from fire. Modern thermodynamics confirms dense stone has dramatically superior heat retention compared to air-based heating. These people were essentially wearing geologically powered personal heaters inside their clothing, achieving core temperature maintenance through brutally cold desert nights that dropped to dangerous temperatures with absolutely no warning whatsoever. 63. A Civil War soldier dealing with an open arm wound and zero medical help available made a decision that should have ended catastrophically, but somehow worked perfectly. He boiled horsehair thread in salt water and sutured his own wound closed without anesthesia or assistance from anyone. The wound never became infected, despite being closed with animal hair in a battlefield environment. Modern microbiologists confirmed boiling sterilizes biological materials effectively, and salt water adds additional antimicrobial properties. This soldier performed sterile self-surgery using horsetail hair and kitchen salt with genuinely impressive results. 64. Shoshone women created a pemmican recipe so effective the resulting food stayed completely edible for 5 full years without any refrigeration whatsoever. They mixed precisely dried meat with service berries and rendered fat where berry acids acted as natural preservatives, protecting the fat from rancidity. Modern food preservation scientists confirmed organic acids in berries genuinely inhibit the oxidation process that causes fat to spoil. These women were engineering a 5-year shelf-stable survival food using 3 natural ingredients and a process refined over generations of careful practical wilderness experience and observation. 65. Early trappers navigating unknown mountain ranges discovered that elk were doing all the difficult route-finding work completely for free. Elk always choose the lowest energy path through any mountain range, meaning their established trails consistently follow the most efficient and passable routes through complex terrain. Trappers who followed elk trails uphill consistently found viable mountain passes without dangerous trial and error of independent route finding. Modern wildlife biologists confirmed elk route selection minimizes elevation gain with remarkable consistency, making their trails genuinely superior. Navigation tools through any difficult mountain terrain. 66. Iroquois warriors solved the problem of keeping fire, starting materials dry during river crossings by storing tinder inside dried beaver bladders, carefully sealed to make them completely waterproof and airtight. The pouches survived full river submersion, and the tinder inside remained perfectly dry and ready to use immediately upon reaching the opposite bank. Modern materials testing confirms dried animal bladder creates an effective waterproof seal when properly prepared. These warriors were using organic waterproof containers made from animal organs to protect their most critical survival equipment during crossings that would have destroyed any other storage method completely. 67. Frontier settlers figured out one of the most reliable early warning systems for flash floods ever developed without any meteorological instruments by watching ant column behavior during threatening weather. When ant columns begin moving rapidly uphill, in large numbers a flash flood is incoming within hours. Ants sense barometric pressure drops that precede storm systems long before humans detect any atmospheric change. Modern entomologists confirmed ants respond to pressure changes with clear behavioral urgency. These settlers were using ant migration patterns as a flood warning system, giving them hours of advance notice before dangerous water arrived. 68. Ojibwe healers were accidentally practicing advanced pharmaceutical medicine centuries before modern science caught up with them. They pressed moldy bread directly onto infected wounds, as standard treatment and infections consistently cleared faster than untreated wounds. Alexander Fleming formally discovered penicillin in 1928, but Ojibwe healers were applying bread mold to infections roughly 200 years earlier. Modern microbiologists confirmed bread mold contains Penicillium species with genuine antibacterial properties. These healers were dispensing functional antibiotics made from stale bread while treating their communities with remarkable effectiveness that nobody in the outside world believed was actually possible. 69. Starving Colorado miners discovered that pine cambium, the thin, living green layer directly beneath outer bark, was genuinely nutritious enough to prevent starvation collapse during extended food emergencies. 1 pound of pine cambium provides approximately 600 calories, along with sufficient nutrients to sustain basic body function. Modern nutritional analysis confirmed pine cambium contains meaningful caloric value. These miners were starving while standing directly next to 600 calorie per pound, survival food growing on every single tree surrounding their camp, simply because nobody had ever thought to tell them the bark was completely edible. 70. Crow warriors located enemy camps across vast distances using nothing but wood smoke and remarkably refined sensory observation. Different tribal groups consistently burned different local tree species, and each wood produces a chemically distinct smoke signature detectable by trained noses from significant distances. Modern chemists confirmed different wood species produce measurably distinct combustion byproduct profiles. These warriors were performing basic chemical analysis using their own noses as detection instruments while tracking enemy positions across miles of open terrain without ever needing to get close enough to risk being spotted by anyone in the opposing camp. 71. Trappers found cave shelters by watching where bats emerged at dusk, and the logic was completely reliable every single time. Bat colonies always roost in caves with openings large enough for a human to enter and use as shelter. Trappers who followed emerging bat swarms at sunset consistently located usable caves without wandering dangerous terrain in darkness. The bats were just heading out for their nightly insect hunt, while trappers used their exit flight patterns as a completely free cave locating service across unfamiliar wilderness. 72. Arizona missionaries surviving brutal desert crossings discovered a water cooling technique so effective it made the difference between dangerous heat exhaustion and manageable desert travel. They buried water gourds 18 inches underground the night before a desert crossing and dug them up the following morning to find the water inside remained genuinely cool throughout the entire next day of travel. Modern thermodynamics confirms soil at 18 inches depth maintains stable cool temperatures regardless of surface heat. These missionaries were using the Earth itself as a natural refrigerator centuries before anyone invented mechanical cooling of any kind. 73. And 1870s. Cavalry scout lost in unfamiliar wilderness for 14 days survived not just physically but psychologically by making a completely new hand-drawn map of his immediate surroundings every single morning without exception. The daily mapping ritual gave him a sense of agency and environmental control that prevented panic from taking hold during 2 full weeks of dangerous isolation. Modern psychologists confirmed that purposeful daily activity focused on environmental mastery is among the strongest known preventers of psychological breakdown during prolonged survival situations. This scout kept his mind intact by drawing maps nobody else would ever see or need. 74. Sioux hunters developed a weather prediction system using goose flight altitude that gave them reliable 48-hour advance forecasts without any meteorological instruments available anywhere on the open plains. Geese fly at measurably higher altitudes when high-pressure systems are building overhead, meaning high-flying geese consistently predicted clear weather arriving within 2 days. Modern meteorologists confirmed bird flight altitude correlates with atmospheric pressure changes in ways that make this observation genuinely predictive. These hunters were reading goose flight patterns as a 2-day weather forecast while crossing terrain where unexpected storms could prove instantly and completely fatal. 75. Trapper. Hugh Glass survived a catastrophic grizzly bear attack and then walked 200 miles to safety after packing his own open wounds with mud and dead leaves, which sounds completely counterintuitive but actually worked. The mud and leaf packing kept flies from laying eggs in the exposed tissue, while simultaneously retaining moisture that prevented the wounds from drying out and cracking further open during the journey. Modern wound care specialists confirmed moisture retention in traumatic wounds dramatically improves healing outcomes. Glass accidentally applied correct wound management principles using forest floor debris while dragging himself across the Montana wilderness. 76. Wagon train survivors who rotated group leadership responsibilities every 3 days made consistently better collective decisions than groups with fixed permanent leaders, and researchers who studied these accounts found the pattern remarkably consistent across multiple documented cases. Fixed leadership creates tunnel vision and decision fatigue that compounds dangerously over time in survival situations. Modern organizational psychologists confirmed rotating leadership prevents the cognitive narrowing that causes fixed leaders to miss critical information. These wagon train groups accidentally discovered optimal crisis leadership structure while crossing the American frontier, and their survival rates reflected the difference in genuinely measurable ways. 77. A Cheyenne warrior's wife treated a gut wound using a hollow reed inserted into the wound as a drainage tube, and the technique was so effective that U.S. Army surgeons who witnessed it in 1867 formally documented the procedure in their own medical records. Proper drainage of abdominal wounds prevents the internal infection buildup that kills most gut wound patients within days. Modern surgeons confirmed drainage tube placement is still a standard component of abdominal wound treatment today. This woman performed correct emergency abdominal surgery using a hollow plant stem, while Army surgeons watched and quietly took notes on everything she did. 78. Great Plains travelers navigating complete whiteout blizzard conditions discovered a directional finding technique so simple it required nothing but a wet finger and basic observation of which side dried first in the wind. Winter winds on the Great Plains blow consistently from the northwest, meaning the northwest-facing side of a wet finger always dried first, giving travelers reliable directional information, even in zero visibility conditions. Modern meteorologists confirmed Great Plains winter wind direction is among the most geographically consistent wind patterns in North America. These travelers were performing basic wind direction analysis using saliva while completely blind in a blizzard. 79. Arapaho people solved the problem of making fire without revealing their position through smoke by burning only thoroughly dried animal dung, which produces nearly complete combustion, leaving almost no visible smoke signature whatsoever. Fresh or moist fuel produces heavy visible smoke because incomplete combustion releases unburned carbon particles, but completely dry dung burns so thoroughly that virtually nothing escapes as visible smoke. Modern combustion engineers confirmed complete combustion dramatically reduces visible smoke output. These warriors were applying basic combustion chemistry using dried dung as their fuel source while remaining completely invisible to anyone watching the surrounding landscape for smoke. 80. California coastal survivors located freshwater sources in unfamiliar terrain by watching where shorebirds flew inland every single evening at dusk without exception. Shorebirds always fly toward freshwater sources to roost overnight, meaning their evening inland flight paths pointed directly toward rivers, springs, and freshwater pools that were completely invisible from the coastline. Survivors who followed shorebird flight patterns at dusk consistently located freshwater within a reasonable distance. Modern ornithologists confirmed shorebirds return to freshwater roosting sites with remarkable daily consistency. These survivors turned routine bird behavior into a reliable freshwater navigation system along an unfamiliar coastline with no maps available. 81. A Revolutionary War soldier lost in a New England swamp survived by tying a knot in a rope every time he changed direction while navigating disorienting terrain. When he needed to escape, he simply reversed his path by following the knot sequence backward. Modern navigation experts confirmed this method creates a reliable physical record of directional changes that works perfectly in zero visibility terrain. This soldier invented a physical breadcrumb trail using rope knots while completely lost and alone in a dark swamp. 82. The lone survivor of an 1855 Rocky Mountain party outlasted every companion by maintaining a strict sleep and wake schedule throughout the entire crisis without ever abandoning his daily routine. Keeping consistent schedule preserved his circadian rhythm, which protected his cognitive function while everyone around him gradually lost their ability to make rational decisions. Modern sleep researchers confirmed circadian rhythm disruption severely impairs survival judgment. This man stayed mentally sharp during a deadly wilderness emergency simply by going to sleep and waking up at the same time every day. 83. Apache warriors treated desert sand eye injuries by flushing affected eyes thoroughly with their own saliva, which sounds unhygienic, but is grounded in legitimate biochemistry. Human saliva contains lysozyme, which is a natural enzyme with proven antibacterial properties that actively breaks down bacterial cell walls on contact. Modern biochemists confirmed lysozyme is genuinely effective against common bacterial contaminants. These warriors were applying a biochemically active antibacterial solution to eye injuries, using a substance their own bodies produce completely free without requiring any external medical supplies whatsoever. 84. Desperate Klondike miners suffering protein deficiency discovered that eating raw fish eyes provided nutrients completely unavailable from any other food source in the Alaskan wilderness. Fish eyes are extraordinarily dense in DHA omega fatty acids, essential for brain function and cellular repair. Miners who consumed fish eyes consistently showed better cognitive function than those who refused. Modern nutritionists confirmed fish eyes contain DHA concentrations far exceeding most available food sources. These miners accidentally treated their own neurological deficiency by eating the part of the fish everyone else immediately threw away. 85. Frontiersmen developed one of the most precise natural freeze prediction systems ever documented by watching hornet nest behavior during late autumn months. Hornets seal their nest entrance completely shut exactly 24 hours before the first killing freeze arrives, without a single documented exception in historical records. Modern entomologists confirmed hornets respond to atmospheric pressure changes that precede freeze events. These frontiersmen were using hornet construction behavior as a 24-hour freeze warning system that gave them exactly enough time to protect their crops, livestock, and supplies before temperatures dropped fatally. 86. Survivors of the Hastings cutoff disaster documented something that completely contradicted every individual survival instinct humans naturally possess during extreme crisis. People who consistently prioritized helping others over personal hoarding outlasted selfish individuals by a significant margin. Researchers confirmed cooperative behavior triggers sustained cortisol regulation that prevents physical breakdown, accelerated by chronic stress. These survivors accidentally discovered that generosity during a survival emergency was not just morally correct, but also a measurably superior physiological strategy that kept cooperative individuals physically functioning significantly longer than those who hoarded everything for themselves. 87. Kiowa healers treated deep joint wounds by packing them with dried powdered sumac berries and consistently produced better outcomes than leaving wounds untreated in the field. Sumac contains high concentrations of tannins, which are natural astringent compounds that cause tissue contraction and actively slow internal bleeding. Modern pharmacologists confirmed tannins have genuine hemostatic properties effective against internal bleeding. These healers were applying a pharmacologically active bleeding control agent made from dried berries while achieving clinical outcomes that genuinely impressed U.S. Army surgeons, who eventually documented their methods in official field reports. 88. Starving Utah settlers were introduced to Seago lily bulbs by Ute people during a desperate food shortage, and the plant proved so significant that Utah later made it the official state flower as formal tribute. Each Seago lily bulb is approximately 20% starch, providing meaningful calories from a plant growing wild across Utah terrain. Modern botanists confirmed Seago lily bulbs are genuinely nutritious and digestible. These settlers were walking past fields of edible starchy bulbs while starving until someone who actually knew the land finally showed them what was growing right beneath their feet. 89. Apache warriors located water hidden within solid rock desert by reading lichen color on boulder surfaces, which sounds impossibly subtle but proved consistently reliable across generations of desert travel. Bright green lichen grows exclusively where moisture seeps continuously through rock faces from underground water sources beneath the surface. Dry rock faces produce only gray or brown lichen, requiring minimal moisture. Modern botanists confirmed lichen species composition directly reflects underlying moisture availability with remarkable accuracy. These warriors were reading botanical moisture indicators on rock surfaces to locate underground water in terrain where finding any water meant the difference between survival and death. 90. Osage people discovered that mixing ash directly into live fire embers dramatically extended burning time without adding any additional fuel whatsoever. Ash slows the oxidation rate of burning coals by partially restricting oxygen access to the ember surface, causing them to burn slower and last significantly longer through the night. Modern combustion engineers confirmed this is the exact same principle used in controlled burn applications today. These people were applying combustion rate chemistry using fireplace ash while achieving fire longevity that would have otherwise required collecting significantly more wood throughout the entire night. 91. Mountain men identified safe dry building wood by reading bark beetle galleries carved into tree surfaces, which sounds impossibly detailed but proved completely reliable across decades of wilderness construction. Specific bark beetle tunnel patterns appear exclusively in wood containing under 20% moisture content, making beetle-marked trees the driest available building material in any forest. Modern foresters confirmed bark beetle activity correlates directly with wood moisture levels. These mountain men were performing moisture content analysis on timber, using insect tunnels as their only measuring instrument. 92. Mojave people. Surviving brutal desert summers built sleeping shelters elevated exactly 18 inches off the ground, and the precise height was not accidental, but based on generations of careful observation of desert air temperature patterns. Air sitting 18 inches above hot desert sand is measurably 20 degrees cooler than air at standing height due to ground radiation heat. Modern thermodynamics confirms this temperature gradient is real and significant. These people were engineering their sleeping environment around a precise microclimatic phenomenon while achieving dramatically cooler rest temperatures using nothing but elevated platforms and careful ancestral observation. 93. And 1890s. Lost hunter stranded alone in Minnesota woods talked out loud to trees every single day and later confirmed this was completely deliberate rather than a sign of mental breakdown. Sustained daily voice use maintains laryngeal muscle function and forces the brain into structured communication patterns that preserve mental clarity during extended isolation. Modern neurologists confirmed regular vocalization during isolation genuinely supports cognitive function maintenance. This hunter was essentially running a daily neurological maintenance program by talking to trees while keeping his mind completely intact through weeks of dangerous wilderness isolation. 94. Comanche warriors treated open fractures in the field by wrapping freshly prepared wet rawhide directly around the injured limb immediately after injury while the material was still completely pliable and soft. As the rawhide dried, it contracted and hardened into a rigid custom-molded cast that conformed perfectly to the exact shape of the individual limb beneath it. Modern orthopedic specialists confirmed controlled compression and immobilization are still the correct treatment principles for open fractures today. These warriors were fabricating custom-fitted orthopedic casts from animal hide using nothing but water and time as their manufacturing process. 95. Colorado Plateau travelers discovered that desert tortoises carried a completely hidden emergency water supply inside their bodies that proved life-saving during extreme drought conditions in the desert. The tortoise bladder stores up to 1 full pint of drinkable water that the animal retains specifically as a physiological drought survival mechanism. Modern herpetologists confirmed tortoise bladder water is safe for human consumption in genuine emergencies. These travelers were essentially finding sealed 1-pint water containers, walking slowly across the desert floor while dying of thirst in terrain that appeared to offer absolutely no accessible water source anywhere. 96. Voyageurs navigating the Great Lakes region developed a brilliantly efficient dual-purpose survival technique involving birch bark that solved 2 problems simultaneously with one single material. They scratched portage route lines and navigational information into pieces of birch bark to create trail maps, and then ate the same bark afterwards since birch inner bark is genuinely edible and provides meaningful calories. Modern nutritionists confirmed birch inner bark contains digestible carbohydrates. These voyagers were making edible maps, meaning the same piece of bark that guided them safely through wilderness also became their meal once the navigation was successfully completed. 97. Nez Perce. People wove sleeping mats from tulle reeds using an overlapping fish scale pattern, specifically engineered to shed burning sparks, without the mat itself ever catching fire during use near open flames. Each overlapping layer deflected sparks away from the layer beneath it, creating a cascade effect that prevented ignition across the entire mat surface. Modern fire safety engineers confirmed overlapping layered materials dramatically improve spark resistance compared to flat woven surfaces. These people were manufacturing fire-resistant bedding, using wetland plants, and a weaving pattern refined over generations of careful observation and practical fire safety experience. 98. Frontiersmen traveling near the Rocky Mountains discovered that mule behavior provided the most reliable, high-altitude warning system available in the wilderness before any elevation measuring instruments existed. Mules instinctively refuse to graze above the elevation where oxygen levels become insufficient for safe physical exertion, and their refusal to move upward was completely consistent across multiple documented accounts. Modern veterinary physiologists confirmed mules are genuinely sensitive to altitude-induced oxygen reduction. These frontiersmen were using mule stubbornness as a precision altitude safety instrument while the mules were simply refusing to go somewhere that made them feel physically terrible. 99. The last Donner Party survivor to be rescued outlasted every single companion through the final brutal weeks using one method that distinguished her from everyone else in the group. She never stopped moving inside camp, maintaining constant micro-movement throughout each day, even when movement served no practical purpose whatsoever. Modern physiologists confirmed continuous low-level movement generates meaningful core body heat through muscle thermogenesis that sitting completely still cannot produce. This woman stayed alive through the final deadly weeks simply by refusing to sit down while everyone around her remained motionless and gradually lost their core body temperature. 100. Lakota warriors treated snow blindness by rubbing powdered charcoal underneath and around their eyes, which looked dramatic but was grounded in completely sound optical physics. Charcoal absorbs light rather than reflecting it, meaning dark pigment applied around eyes dramatically reduces the amount of UV light reflecting off surrounding snow surfaces into the eye. Modern sports medicine confirmed this is the exact same principle behind the eye black athletes apply beneath their eyes during outdoor competition today. These warriors were applying UV glare reduction technology using fireplace charcoal while achieving the same protective effect as modern athletic performance eye black. 101. Seminole people living in Florida swamps treated dangerous fevers using Spanish moss soaked thoroughly in water and wrapped directly around the patient's head until body temperature dropped to safe levels. The continuous evaporation of water from the wet moss pulled heat away from the skull and brought dangerously high body temperatures down rapidly. Modern physicians confirmed evaporative cooling is still a standard first response treatment for fever and heat stroke today. These healers were running a medically sound fever reduction treatment using swamp moss and creek water with genuine clinical effectiveness. 102. A stranded 1840s Army surveyor discovered that raw cattail root pounded thoroughly and mixed with creek water created a drinkable starchy paste nutritious enough to sustain a grown man through an entire day of wilderness survival. One single cattail plant provided enough paste for a full day of basic nutrition. Modern botanists confirmed cattail root contains meaningful concentrations of digestible starch and calories. This surveyor was standing knee-deep in a swamp surrounded by an unlimited supply of edible starchy plants, while nearly starving simply because nobody had ever shown him cattails were food. 103. Blackfoot warriors developed a method for assessing enemy physical condition through fresh snow that gave them critical tactical intelligence before any direct contact occurred. Shallow footprints in fresh snow indicated a starving and physically weakened person, while deep prints indicated someone well-fed and physically dangerous. The weight a body applies to snow directly reflects its mass and physical condition at the time of travel. Modern forensic analysts confirmed footprint depth analysis provides genuine information about the physical state of the person who made them while moving through fresh snow. 104. Trappers in the northern Rockies solved the snow blindness problem during emergencies by cutting strips of smoked animal intestine stretched thin enough to be translucent and wearing them across their eyes as improvised goggles. The translucent material reduced incoming light intensity enough to prevent UV damage while still allowing sufficient vision for safe travel through bright snow-covered terrain. Modern optical engineers confirmed translucent materials with sufficient light reduction properties genuinely protect against UV snowblindness. These trappers were manufacturing functional UV protective eyewear from animal organs while traveling through terrain that would have blinded them within hours without eye protection. 105. And 1850s. California trapper survived 11 full days without any solid food by boiling pine needles and drinking the resulting tea continuously throughout his ordeal. Pine needles contain vitamin C concentrations approximately 5 times higher than oranges, making pine needle tea one of the most potent natural vitamin C sources available in any wilderness environment. Modern nutritional analysis confirmed pine needle tea provides genuine and significant vitamin C content. This trapper was brewing a vitamin C supplement 5 times stronger than orange juice, using nothing but tree needles and boiling water while waiting for rescue. 106. Choctaw guides taught settlers to detect underground water by pressing an ear directly against the ground at dawn and listening carefully for low-frequency vibrations moving through the soil beneath them. Water moving through shallow underground aquifers creates detectable vibrations that travel through soil, most clearly during the stillness of early morning before surface noise obscures them. Modern hydrologists confirmed underground water movement does produce low-frequency vibrations detectable through ground contact under sufficiently quiet conditions. These guides were teaching settlers to hear underground rivers using nothing but their ears pressed against the dirt in morning silence. 107. Great Basin tribes preserved meat for years without salt by coating strips thoroughly in a thick paste made from juniper ash, mixed with water, then allowing the coating to harden completely around the meat surface. The alkaline ash coating created an airtight antibacterial seal that prevented both bacterial growth and oxidation on the meat surface beneath it. Modern food preservation scientists confirmed alkaline coatings genuinely inhibit bacterial activity and spoilage. These tribes were running a long-term meat preservation operation, using wood ash and water that kept food edible for years without refrigeration or salt of any kind. 108. And 1880s. Montana rancher lost in a whiteout blizzard survived by doing something that sounds completely counterintuitive, but proved entirely reliable. He stopped trying to navigate himself and simply followed his own cattle instead. Cattle walk directly into the wind during blizzards as an instinctive behavioral response and stop walking only when they physically reach a sheltered location. Modern animal behaviorists confirmed this blizzard orientation behavior in cattle is consistent and reliable. This rancher let his cows navigate a deadly blizzard while he followed behind, and they walked him directly to shelter without a single wrong turn. 109. Pueblo warriors located hidden enemies in canyon terrain, using lizards as living motion detection sensors, which sounds completely absurd until you understand the biology involved. Lizards freeze completely still and orient their bodies directly toward any large warm-blooded creature within 50 feet of their position, making them reliable indicators of nearby human presence to any trained observer watching them. Modern herpetologists confirmed lizard threat orientation behavior is consistent and predictable. These warriors were reading lizard body positioning across canyon walls as a motion detection system that revealed hidden enemy positions without requiring any direct line of sight whatsoever. 110. Ojibwe people manufactured emergency waterproof containers from sheets of birch bark, folded and sealed at every corner, with pine pitch that were so effective they could hold water and even be used to boil liquid directly over an open fire without the bark burning through. The water inside kept the bark cool enough to prevent combustion while the fire heated the liquid contents. Modern materials testing confirmed pine pitch sealed birch bark containers genuinely function as described. These people were boiling water in containers made entirely from tree materials, using a construction method refined over countless generations of practical wilderness necessity. 111. A Cherokee runner delivering urgent winter messages across the Appalachian Mountains developed a frostbite treatment method that sounds completely outrageous, but is grounded in actual physiological chemistry. He urinated into his own moccasins every few hours during the multi-day journey, and the warmth combined with the natural acidity of urine repeatedly restored circulation to his freezing feet throughout the entire trip. Modern physiologists confirmed warm fluid application and mild acid contact both stimulate surface circulation in cold, affected tissue. This man delivered his messages successfully by using his own body as a portable frostbite treatment system the entire way. And that is 111 survival hacks from history that are so insane they actually worked. These people had no hospitals, no Google, no survival gear, and somehow figured out how to stay alive using bat flights, boot soup, and mule stubbornness. If you learned something completely ridiculous today, then hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Dumb History because we make the past so weird you will never forget it. And drop a comment telling us which hack you would actually try. We will see you in the next one.